What would you do if the first thing you heard after 6 months of waiting was that your family had already replaced you? I woke up in a hard plastic chair outside the intensive care unit, my neck stiff, my mouth dry, my body heavy in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Someone was saying my name, quietly, like they were testing whether I was still useful. Tessa. I lifted my head. The hospital lights felt too bright, but I didn't look away. I had learned not to flinch these past 6 months. My name is Tessa Wren. I am 71 years old. And my daughter, Clara, had not opened her eyes in half a year. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. Evan stood in front of me, my son-in-law, Clara's husband. His hands were in his coat pockets. He didn't look scared. He didn't look relieved. He looked finished. Like a man who had already moved on and was annoyed by loose ends. "She's stable," I said, because someone had to say something human. He nodded once. "Yeah, that's what they keep saying." I waited for more. For gratitude. For fear. For anything that sounded like love. Instead, he said she was going to die. So I gave the house to my mistress. The words didn't land all at once. They arrived in pieces. Going to die. Gave the house. I stared at him, certain I had misunderstood. "What did you say?" He sighed. Like I was slow, I made a decision. The house was just sitting there. Lydia needed a place. Lydia, the name sat between us like a stain. "That's my home," I said. My voice sounded calm. That frightened me more than anger would have. He finally looked at me then. Not with shame, with irritation. "You should find somewhere else to live," he said. "This doesn't have to be difficult." I waited for the apology that never came, the explanation that never followed. He checked his phone. I stood up. My legs shook, but I didn't let him see it. I picked up my bag. I walked past him without another word. Behind me, his screen lit up. I saw the message before he could tilt it away. 3 hours. She'll be gone. I sat in my car for a long time after leaving the hospital, my hands still on the steering wheel, Evan's words replaying as if they were looking for a place to settle. They couldn't. Not in my body. Not in my memory. Because the house he claimed to give away had never been his to touch. I bought that house 20 years ago, just off Alberta Street. Back when the paint was peeling and the sidewalks were cracked. Clara was 22 then, fresh out of college, laughing in the passenger seat while I signed papers with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "You did it, Mom," she had said. "You really did it. I had every payment, every repair, every winter when the furnace threatened to quit. My name was on the deed. Clean and clear. Clara's name came later, added as successor. Not because I was afraid of dying, but because I trusted her. Evan had never been on anything. Not the deed, not the insurance, not the utilities. When he married my daughter, he moved into a house that already existed, into a life already built. I called him from the car. He answered on the second ring. "You can't give away that house," I said. "It isn't yours." There was a pause. Not surprise, calculation. "You're overreacting," he replied. I handled things how I asked. I had paperwork done. That was when my chest tightened. "What paperwork you wouldn't understand?" he said. "You've been distracted." I ended the call before my voice could break. At a red light, my phone buzzed. A notification from the home security app Clara had insisted on installing years ago. New access granted. The name attached wasn't mine. Lydia Cross. My hands went cold. Keys meant preparation. Preparation meant time. This hadn't happened overnight. This wasn't panic. It was a plan. When I pulled up the old property records on my phone, one line stood out. A reference number. A document listed under my name. I stared at it, knowing with absolute certainty that I had never signed a thing like that. I didn't go home. I pulled into a quiet side street and sat there, phone in my lap, breathing until my hands stopped shaking. Evan thought I would cry. He thought I would call my sister or beg a neighbor. He thought wrong. The first call was to Daniel Ortiz, an elder law attorney whose name I remembered from a flyer Clara once brought home. I need to know if someone can give away my house without my consent. I said, Daniel didn't waste time. Only if you signed something. I didn't. Then we need to see what they're claiming you signed. The second call was to the county records office. I put them on speaker. There's a document listed under my name. I said, a power of attorney. The clerk paused. I could hear keys clicking. I see it. Dated 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I was in a hospital. I said, my daughter was in a coma. I never signed anything. Another pause. This one heavier. Ma'am, the clerk said carefully, you should speak to an attorney immediately. I am. I replied and ended the call. Daniel called back within minutes. The date lines up with your hospitalization, he said. If the signature isn't yours, this is fraud. I want them out of my house. I said, then we move fast. He answered, I'll prepare an unlawful occupancy notice. You can request a civil standby. The third call was to local authorities. I didn't explain my feelings. I explained facts. This is my residence. I said, I have reason to believe unauthorized occupants are moving in. They agreed to be present. While Daniel drafted paperwork, I authorized a locksmith recommended by the city. When the man asked, are you sure I looked at my name on the deed and said, yes, the locks were changed legally, efficiently, without drama. Daniel emailed the notice. I read it once. Then again, clear language. My address, my rights. My phone buzzed. A message from Evan. We're heading back. I typed nothing. I didn't warn them. I didn't explain. I simply said out loud, to no one in particular, let them come back. They pulled up like nothing had changed. Evan stepped out first. Relaxed. Phone in hand. Lydia followed, already reaching into her bag for the keys. Her movements practiced. Confident. She walked ahead of him, like the house already knew her. The key went into the lock. She turned it once, then again. It stuck, she said, laughing lightly. These old locks. She tried again, harder. The door didn't move. Evan frowned. Give it to me. He took the keys and forced them, irritation creeping into his voice. This doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense, a man said from a few steps away. They both turned. A civil officer stood near the sidewalk, hands folded, neutral and patient. The notice taped to the door fluttered slightly. Evan's face changed. Who are you? I'm here for a civil standby. The officer replied. The homeowner requested assistance. Lydia stepped back, her eyes darting to the paper. Homeowner, she said sharply. This is our house. The officer didn't argue. He pointed. The notice explains otherwise. Evan ripped the paper down and skimmed it. His jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. He snapped. She can't do this. I spoke then, my voice steady. I already did. He looked at me like he hadn't seen me standing there. Tessa, stop this. You're embarrassing yourself. Lydia turned to him. What is this? She demanded. You said it was yours. I handled it, he said, too quickly. Handled how? Her voice rose. You told me the deed was clear. I watched her understanding shift, the color draining from her face as she read my name on the notice. Not his. Mine. You lied to me, she said. This isn't the time. Evan hissed. The officer cleared his throat. You'll need to vacate. Any belongings can be collected under supervision. Lydia took a step back, clutching her bag. Evan stared at the door like he could will it open. My phone rang. Daniel Ortiz. I answered. They're here. Good, he said calmly. Because this goes deeper than trespassing. What happens when a lie leaves a paper trail? Daniel asked me to come to his office that afternoon. He didn't sound alarmed, which told me everything. Alarm would have meant uncertainty. This was precision. He spread the documents across the desk between us. This is the power of attorney they used, he said. And this is your signature from the deed you signed 20 years ago. I leaned forward. I didn't need a magnifying glass to know the difference. That isn't mine, I said. No. Daniel agreed. It isn't even a good imitation. He slid another page forward. We had a handwriting analyst compare them. The pressure points are wrong. The slant is wrong. Whoever signed this was copying, not writing. I closed my eyes for a moment. So he forged it. Yes. Daniel didn't soften it. And the notary agrees. Agrees, I opened my eyes. She cooperated. He said, she admits Evan brought the document in, already signed. She never witnessed you. She stamped it anyway. My chest tightened. Why would she do that? She said he told her you were ill and unavailable, Daniel replied. He said time was sensitive. I let out a short laugh that surprised both of us. Everything was sensitive. My daughter was dying, Daniel nodded. That's what makes this worse. Evan called while I was still there. I put him on speaker. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said. I thought I was being practical. Practical, I repeated. I needed stability, he replied. Lydia needed a place. I was thinking ahead. Daniel leaned closer to the phone. Thinking ahead doesn't include forgery. There was silence. Then Evan said, she helped start it. I stiffened. Who did Lydia? He muttered. She found the notary. She said it was common. The line went dead. Daniel gathered the papers neatly. This is no longer just a property dispute, he said. We have a fraudulent power of attorney, a cooperating notary, and proof of intent. I watched him place the file into a folder with my name on it. This could become criminal, Daniel said quietly. Is protecting your child the same as protecting someone who betrayed you? Evan called that night. Not angry this time. Careful. Tessa, he said. Like the word itself might soften me. Please, don't take this any further. I didn't answer right away. I waited until he filled the space. If this turns criminal, he continued, it will destroy everything. Clara wouldn't want that. My grip tightened around the phone. You don't get to speak for her. I was under pressure. He said, I made a bad call, but charges. His voice dropped. That's permanent. So is what you did, I replied. He swallowed audibly. Think about your daughter. That was the point. The only point. The next morning, I was back at the hospital. A nurse I recognized from countless sleepless days pulled me aside. Mrs. Wren? She said gently. We saw a response. My heart stuttered. What kind of response? Neurological. She answered. Small, but intentional. She squeezed my hand when I asked. I sat down before my legs gave out. Evan texted again while I was sitting there. I'll give it back. We can fix this. Fix, like this was a loose hinge. Like my daughter hadn't been reduced to a bargaining chip. Daniel called an hour later. We can proceed however you want, he said. Civil only, or criminal. I looked through the glass at Clara's still body, the rise and fall of her chest. I won't protect him, I said, but I won't make her recovery collateral damage either. There was a pause. I understand. Do what you need to do, I added, quietly, permanently. That afternoon, I signed new documents, revoked old ones. Locked doors no one else would ever open again. When Evan called back, I didn't answer. I had already made my decision. What happens when access is permanently revoked? Daniel met me at his office first thing in the morning. He slid a thin stack of papers across the table. Neat and final. This revokes every prior document. He said, power of attorney, medical proxy, financial access, all of it. I picked up the pen without hesitation. And the new proxy, I asked. A registered nurse you trust. He replied, and yourself as primary. Evan has no authority left. None, I signed. Each page felt lighter than the last. By noon, the hospital had the update. A doctor I hadn't met before came into Clara's room, tablet in hand. Mrs. Wren, he said, we've removed Evan from all decision-making roles. He called earlier. He was surprised. He should be, I said. The doctor nodded once. You're in control now. That afternoon, Lydia called. She didn't bother pretending. You can't do this, she said. Evan told me everything was handled. Evan lied, I replied. You have until tomorrow evening to vacate. Silence, then anger. You're heartless. No, I said calmly. I'm finished. She was gone by nightfall. A neighbor texted me that boxes were being loaded, voices sharp, doors slamming. Evan didn't show. He didn't need to. He called later instead. You planned this, he said. His voice thin. You waited. I listened. I corrected. And then I acted. This isn't temporary, is it? He asked. No. The word landed hard between us. I returned to the hospital just before visiting hours ended. Clara looked the same as always. Still, pale, fighting in ways no one could see. I took her hand. It's done. I whispered. You're safe. Her fingers moved. At first, I thought it was reflex, a trick of my own hope. Then her grip tightened just slightly, but enough. Clara, I said, leaning closer. Her eyes fluttered, and then, slowly, they opened. How do you tell someone the truth without breaking them again? Clara woke in pieces. Not all at once. A blink, a squeeze of my fingers, a breath that seemed more intentional than the last. When she finally spoke, her voice was thin but clear. Mom, I'm here, I said immediately. I never left. She frowned slightly, as if the effort of thinking hurt. Evan, I didn't answer right away. I waited until the nurse finished her checks and stepped out. Then I pulled my chair closer. There are things you don't need to worry about yet, I said carefully. Clara looked at me. Really looked. You're lying. I smiled despite the ache in my chest. You always could tell. I didn't give her everything at once. I told her about the house first. About the locks. About how it was safe. Then I told her about Evan. He thought you wouldn't wake up, I said quietly. He made decisions he had no right to make. Her brow tightened. What kind of decisions? Legal ones. Medical ones. Property. She swallowed. Did I sign something? No. Her hand tightened around mine. Did I ever give permission? No. She closed her eyes. Not in exhaustion, but in something sharper. After a long moment, she said, he told people I was dying. Didn't he? Yes. And he acted like that gave him authority. Yes. Her voice steadied. It didn't. No, I said. It never did. A tear slid down her temple. Silent and furious. I would never have let him do that. Not to you, not to us. I know. I said, that's why it's over. She opened her eyes again. Is he still in charge of anything? No, I answered. He has no access, no voice, no standing. She nodded once. Good. That night, after she fell back asleep, I went home alone for the first time in months. I sat at the kitchen table with a single lamp on and called Daniel. I need to update my will, I said. He didn't ask why. He just said, tomorrow morning. Yes, I replied. Nothing stays unprotected anymore. Daniel read the document once. Then again. He didn't rush me. You're certain? He said at last. Yes. The house. Remaining assets. and any future proceeds will go into the trust. He continued, the Women's Housing Foundation becomes the sole beneficiary. That's correct. And Clara, I've already spoken to her. I said, she supports it. Daniel nodded. Then Evan receives nothing. No property. No expectation. No claim. Expectation. That was the word that mattered. Evan had lived off expectation. The assumption that marriage entitled him to security, that patience would be rewarded, that silence meant permission. I signed the last page. There's no undoing this, Daniel said, not as a warning, but as a confirmation. I know. Later that afternoon, Evan showed up at the hospital without calling first. Security stopped him at the desk. I'm her husband, he said, loud enough for people to look. I have rights. A nurse checked the chart. You don't. He demanded to see me instead. When he finally stood in front of me, his voice was low and urgent. You didn't have to do this. Yes. I said. I did. You took everything, he said. My future, my stability. I met his eyes. You gambled those away when you decided I didn't matter. He tried again. Softer this time. I said I was sorry. I didn't ask for that. I replied, what do you want from me, he demanded. I stood. Distance. Lydia never came up again. No calls. No messages. No explanation. She vanished the way she had arrived through Evan, and then gone when he no longer had anything to offer. That night, after Clara fell asleep, my phone buzzed. One message. I never meant to hurt you. I read it once. Then I turned the phone face down and walked into the kitchen, where the house was quiet and solid and finally mine again. Some decisions are loud. The most important ones are not. The house did not change because it did not need to. When I unlocked the door that morning, nothing felt reclaimed. It felt confirmed. The floor still creaked in the same places. Clara's old height marks were still on the kitchen frame. The walls did not celebrate. They simply held. Clara came home 2 weeks later. Not walking on her own yet. Not strong, but present. I remember this corner, she said quietly as we moved through the hallway. I used to hide here when I was little. You always thought you were invisible, I said. She smiled faintly. I wasn't. No, I agreed. You never were. Evan never came back. He did not fight the will. He did not contest the trust. He learned, quickly, that silence was cheaper than exposure. I heard through Daniel that he changed apartments, changed jobs, changed stories. He lost nothing loudly. That was the punishment. One afternoon, Clara asked, do you hate him? I answered honestly, no. Then why did you stop him? I looked at her. Because love without boundaries isn't love. It's permission. She nodded slowly, like she was filing that away for later. Life did not return to normal. It returned to honest. There were physical therapy sessions, paperwork, quiet meals. Some days Clara cried without knowing why. Some days I did. We did not rush each other through it. Near the end of the month, I sat at the same kitchen table where Evan once stood and told me to leave. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Before you go, if this story meant something to you, if you've ever been told to shrink, to stay quiet, to give up space you earned, tap like, leave a comment, or subscribe. Stories like this survive because people recognize themselves in them. Here is what this taught me, and I say it plainly. Forgiveness is personal. Dignity is not negotiable. You can release anger without reopening doors. You can love someone and still remove their access to your life. Boundaries are not revenge. They are maintenance. The house stayed standing because I did, and nothing that tried to take it ever mattered again.